Hello, cousins. Welcome to SASS Mass, our spirituality and support symposium. Think morning witchy chats around a warm campfire. The recording has started, and by participating in SASS, you agree to read and accept the terms of engagement, which we post in the chat. We ask that you mute during the recording for clarity during the meeting and for the afterplay. We will now get started with a few announcements.
So we're going rogue today because I think Maria is on Maria's adventuring right now. And so I get to be the one to give y'all some announcements. And I love that she being the operations witch, right? She draws the lines and then we just like color them in. And she probably knows that there's not a whole lot of announcements this week, other than the fact that there's so many witches coming into the courtyard right now. And that is so exciting to see that, for one. For two, um, we we have a lot going on, like not underground, but behind the scenes, because we're now planning, or we are in the process of fine-tuning the autumnal convergence plans. We got to meet with a bunch of the witches that are attending this year last night. And that was a lot of fun. We got to get to know them a little bit better and feel into how we can create an experience that is the most expansive for specifically this group of witches. And so for everyone that showed up to that last night, thank you. You guys are so amazing. And this is going to be so much fun. So much fun. The other thing that we have going on is tonight is the Sacred Moon Circle for the Spellcrafters Guild. This is the guild is essentially the coven for the resource center. So once you get through foundations, you get the opportunity to join the guild if you want to do that. And that's where we dive deeper into your relationship with your magical practice specifically, and the different facets of what is involved in a magical practice. For example, like this month, we're working on grounding and our relationship with grounding, and learning from each other and kind of fine-tuning what is the best way to ground my system specifically, and what does grounding even mean. So that's kind of what the guild does. Every month it's a little different, but we meet the night before the full moon to do a big release ceremony together. And it is a beautiful and powerful thing. It's like the sacred space meetings that you guys go to, but it's like the sacred space meetings and the witch work circles times like 10 as far as like the work that we're doing, and all like mashed together. So you're getting that like ceremonial stuff and the deep emotional work and everything too. So that's happening tonight, and it's very needed. There's lots going on with that. We're going to be posting some upcoming workshops and stuff soon, so be on the lookout for that. Uh, if you are a member of the guild and are like, you know what, I would love to do a workshop on braid magic and how to incorporate your magic into like doing your hair every day or something. Like all you have to do, again, if you're a member of the guild, is to reach out to support at brightanddark.org and just let the team know, hey, I'm interested in doing this. What do I got to do? Because our community would really love something like that. So just putting that out there, encouragement. Your special giftings are important to the whole community, and we would love to learn from you. I'm trying to think if there is anything else to say. I don't know. I think that's it as far as announcements. Am I forgetting anything, guys? The witch work circles on the 21st. Your app is gonna send you notifications for everything. So you're not gonna miss it. If you're missing meetings that you really want to go to at this point, like me saying it in the middle, like in SASS isn't gonna do any good. You guys will get like dinged or pinged like 30 minutes before whatever event that you RSVP to. So yeah. That being said, what you guys don't know is that right off screen, my mom is looking at me. So that's happening like right now. Here's some context. If you're picking up on an extra layer of awkward, there you go. Good. I'm glad I could make you awkward. Wit says hi. She says everyone says hi. You can say hi too. She can hear you. Hi, everybody.
Hi, miss you.
Hi. Ew. I have been out of connection for a while. She's been out on a farm doing farm stuff, getting chicken fever and all that. Like been in the chicken distribution thing, whatever that is.
So jealous.
I know, right?
Learning to drive a tractor.
We will soon invade the farm, guys. Don't you worry. There will come a day. So if this is your first SASS, welcome. This is a very casual conversation. We have no like plans unless someone's like sitting there like, hey, I really want to talk about this. I've been thinking about it all week. Now is your time to do that. And if you want to weigh in on what someone says, that's when you can like raise your hand and just go for it. But yeah. Hi. How you guys doing? What's going on in your world? It's been a week for me. But I'm here for it. It's great. Lots of expansion and learning and freeing and releasing. Isn't it funny how like releasing often looks like everything's fucking falling apart? I wonder if the trees think that way when they let go of their leaves, right?
Or are they relieved?
Right, exactly. What if we started engaging with these tower moments like the leaves do when the trees do when they let go of their leaves? Yep, there it goes. The season is over.
I get to rest.
Look at this glorious display, but we're like, no, light it on fire. Burn it all. I'm out of here. Oh, to have the grace of a tree. You know, life goals, man. I'm working on it. I'm going to just keep talking until somebody else decides to jump in. I also know that my mom is watching me like do this at the same time. So it's like, somebody save me. So yeah, if anyone's wondering, are you out in your family? Yup. They know.
Yep.
They all know.
I've known for years, actually. Yeah.
You guys are mean. No, we're gonna let you just sit there and talk. Go ahead, Wit.
I'll
You
save
guys
you. I'll go
asked-
ahead and start just talking to you of rambling. I'll take over your rambling. So um I've had God, my computer every time I start talking, it always tells me it looks like you're done talking. Um no, I don't want to keep talking. Don't tell me what to do, computer. I've had quite the week as well too, where there was some pretty pokey stuff and things happen at my job, but it's pokey, it's poking at the job during the job day, but it's pokey in all areas of my life. Yay! And I had the opportunity to have some very quiet time this weekend to really mull over and sit through my feelings. And one of the big things that I was like trying to sit with or figure out, and this is something that, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one who deals with this, of trying to, as you're reestablishing your relationship with your intuition, of when you start, being worried about something, like I'm worried about something at work, and trying to determine if it is my anxiety, my control, my relationship with trying to control everything coming back up. And so like having anxiety about it, or if it's a true intuition of, I know this situation is not going to go well for somebody involved, and that was a hard one to kind of figure out and like work through this weekend too, of like this whole week. It like happened on Wednesday. Well, it's been happening for a little while, but like it came to a head on Wednesday, and I was like, I don't know. Is this just the fact that I can't control this situation or help this person out and like get them the thing that they need, that I can so clearly see that they need, And this morning I was like, well, if I was to like post this in Bright and Dark in our app and ask the community, what have you done? I was like, I know exactly what they're going to say. Well, like, have you asked your guides? Have you used your spiritual team yet? Have you asked, the universe for a sign or something? So I sat there and I was like, all right, so give me a sign. And I said something more than feathers, because like feathers is my sync with my spirit team. And like, I'm sitting in my on my couch. So I do not doubt that they could get me a feather somehow. They have in the past. I was like, give me something a little bit different than that. Something that was clear that I'll know that's what it is. And I was sitting like in complete silence at my house. And all of a sudden I heard crows outside, and I hadn't heard any birds besides when I was outside, like from inside my house. And I was like, well, that's the sign there to me that that's my intuition playing in here, which then what I felt then was like instant grief. And sitting, like, I think I've been sitting at that precipice of like, how do I handle this? Like, I can't move forward because I don't know what, I'm dealing with. Oh, is this just like my social conditioning coming out? Or is this my this or that, And I like that wave of grief that hit me this morning after I like got to that point and had my, you know, guides, kind of confirm for me. You are allowed to ask for validation. It's amazing. They do show up. And now I've been sitting with that grief of like, now I've been able to like move, I think, towards where I need to go, of like sitting with that emotion. And like the helplessness that I feel with it. And that's been a fun thing to sit with this morning and work through. I don't know why I shared it, but I felt compelled to share this. So, oh, look, Jen wants to poke me. She poked me a little bit about this yesterday too. So,
And oh, look, Maria just stopped in right after the announcements.
oh, funny how that happened.
I wonder how she stumbled through them. You'll see in the playback, Maria. I actually wanted to get in on here. Let me put my hand down. Okay. All right. So I would love to talk about Daphne's question, like how do you figure out between intuition versus anxiety. I love this. All right, because I have been so all up in this. What is inspired action and what is a motherfucking trauma response? Because, right, when we're in these like tower moments, for me, my trauma response is usually like pack, get the fuck out. Like pack, do all the things, boom, 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 get it done, right? I am aware that that's a trauma response and anxiety driven. I'm aware that some of that is that I need to actively process my emotions. And so I need to like physically engage with this, whatever process it is of releasing that comes when you're like anxious. If you're anxious about something, usually you're like all fixated on something or something's happening in your life that you're having anyway. So what I have been using as my like inspired action or anxiety or trauma response is my intuition actually includes my physical body in that inspired action, right? So my intuition isn't going to tell me or encourage me to reorganize the entire house overnight because like it needs to be done tomorrow. That's not including my physical experience or the needs of my whole system. My intuition includes the needs of every aspect of my system. My anxiety or fight or flight or trauma response doesn't, right? There's usually a sense of urgency with a trauma response or with anxiety that when you cultivate a relationship with your magic and your intuition, there really isn't urgency. There's a, I should probably do this, right? It's more like that, more like nagging, not like a, oh my God, I'm under attack. And if I don't do this thing like right now, like if I don't push all the way and go hard, 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 then, you know, the world is going to end. Your intuition doesn't usually uh, communicate like that. That is your fight or flight system trying to save you, right? Is that helpful? Does that make sense? You guys are welcome to ask clarifying questions too. And that this is going to be a little different for all of us, right? Depending on your particular flavor of trauma, right? But that's usually a pretty good judge for me, is if like inspired action usually doesn't come at the expense of my physical body or my physical experience. Go ahead, Whit.
Yes, all of that. And like for me, my experience where like where I have a harder time like pulling out my intuition is like things like this here that it's like a situation where I can see a potential outcome and you know, I have my certain type of trauma and my training of my whole life is to like be able to predict the outcomes of different situations and pretty intense situations, um, or like have a plan for every single thing that could possibly go wrong, and then you know that way we can act on it and lead a team through that. And so you know I have gotten used to like an anxiety of just like an overall kind of feeling of anxiety that um, has been real hard for me to like pull apart from like where is this with my intuition and my anxiety. You know, there are times where I'm like, boom, I know this is what Jen just said, what Jen Marie just said. It's like, yep, okay, this is, you know, fight or flight. I know that this is not, this is my brain, this is my socialized brain, trauma informed brain here, going all over the place. Um, And I've had to ask for that validation or ask for some sign to help me understand one way or the other. And I still doubt those signs, like the bird calling today. I was like, well, that's such a coincidence. There's birds outside all the time, but just like the immediacy of the bird happening when I hadn't been hearing it, like I still have to like remind myself that I need to trust those things. And so I think like being aware that you can ask for help either from your peers, your cousins. Sometimes that's helpful too, to be like, hey, can I talk to this situation? And sometimes talking through that helps too, to kind of pull apart what it is that it is. Oh, this is like my social conditioned response. This is my trauma response. Or this is actually, no, I can feel stronger about this now, of like, this is an intuition. So you can ask for help and for validation. All right, Ezra.
Yeah, this is a really good one, and it's been coming up a lot the last week for me, actually. Like I've been seeing it like in a lot of like comment sections and stuff. So it's funny that this popped up, but of course. And so one of the things, like there's actually like two different answers that popped up for me. Was like one of them that I use as somebody who has not been super connected to like my interoception, like how it actually feels in my body. For a lot of my life, I ended up learning like how to like questions to ask myself, like context clues, and like basically very similar to what was describing there in Jean Marie and stuff. And like what one of the questions I asked myself was, who does it benefit if I act in this way? like like, and a lot of times, you know, like with the like the urgency type of thing, that tends to benefit like me being in like a really like, oh my gosh, this is gonna happen. That doesn't actually benefit me usually. So that's one of the clues that I've just like, that's like an intellectualizing way that I found to work around kind of like my interoception, because we're, you know, also anxious, you know, beings or depressed beings, and like people that have dissociated because of trauma and all that stuff. And I think that's like you know, that's a great way to do that. And there's another like I've been trying to reconnect with my body and do embodiment work and do a lot of crying. like like I know I said that like you know, but like been crying a lot and like shaking a lot, like doing like shaking practices and stuff like that to get the anxiety out, because I feel like all of those things, it does feel like it's clouding my intuition and in all these layers. And so the question I've been learning to ask myself in regards to whether or not it's intuition or anxiety is, where do I feel this in my body? And I've been, you know, trying to connect with that more and more. It's not easy because, you know, like I feel like I spent most of my life not doing that. I was like, why would I ever want to feel what's going on in my body? That sounds like it sucks. like, and so, and so now I'm like, okay, body, what are you feeling? And I have to like pull myself back to it. And one of the things that's starting to come through for me is like the anxieties in my head. Like the anxiety is like a very cerebral, like the story, like the, oh, I need to do this because XYZ, I need to do that, like all of these things that, you know, to prepare for in case something bad happens. That's what we do. And the intuition it's happening usually for me in my stomach. So that's a very big place for me. And I feel like in general, it can happen. It's happening in a sensory way, even if it's not in my stomach. That's just a big one for me. But those sensory feelings, those are leading me more toward intuition, whereas my head and my stories and that usually is leading me in the direction of where I've been before, which is, that I kind of go back in the flow chart. I go back to the, like, who does it benefit? Like, what if I'm still confused, that kind of thing. So I hope that helped anybody, but I think that's the end of my train of thought. So I think Jen Marie's next. I need to make the flow chart.
I think that Ocean actually is.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay.
Okay, I'm glad. I was gonna start, and then I was like, wait, am I? Because it just shows me at the top, because I'm on my phone today. So I'm running around doing stuff around the house, getting ready for the full moon tonight. I know this brings it like way back to like the beginning of what Wit said, but I want to talk about like what we're talking about too. But I had an experience this weekend with crows too, and that just like really stuck out to me because I was sitting out in the yard and I was talking to the wind, and I was like I can't even remember what I asked. I know, I should have written it down, right, and put a date on it. Um, you learn, but you don't like it's a whole separate thing to actually integrate the action into your routine. And so let that be validation for anyone else who forgets to write the thing down. And so I was asking, I think something about like my authentic self and like what's like aligned for me, and like that's kind of in the headspace I've been in, is like, who am I, like just the simple questions of life, right? And I heard a crow, and I saw one over in like there's a mulberry tree in my yard, and that's actually the mulberry tree that I got the mulberries from to make the mulberry mead that I brought to the convergence last year, and I have enough to bring this year too. So if anybody's coming this year, you can try my mulberry mead if you want to. And so then there was more of them. There was a feather in my yard too, and I thought of you, and I should have said something. I always forget to post when I just get excited that I've seen like a sign or whatnot. And I looked above me, and there's a sycamore tree that I sit under and I ground with. And there was a crow directly above my head, like on a branch. And it was so cool to just like, it felt like it was like connecting with me, and it was like honestly trying to give me something, but I haven't really like, the crows are like feeling like a thing lately. I heard one cawing in the yard this morning too. And then yeah, there's a whole bunch of them around, and whenever I see them, whenever they come near my house, I talk to them, so that might help too. But yeah, crows are like, it's a weird thing. So like the more that I get into synchronicities, the more that it gets more complex, because I understand the synchronicities of the people around me, but then I can also apply my own synchronicities. But then there are also shared synchronicities. Like there's like all of these like connections, right? Like when you're practicing connection-based magic. And so it's like, so that totally brings me back, right, to like the intuition and like what's when is my intuition talking to me, when is, and so when I started my relationship with my body and like body magic, I guess I would call it, I I learned a concept, and actually you keep talking about workshops, and then every time you talk about it, I keep thinking about doing a workshop on this. So let me know if you're interested. Um, it's called muscle testing. And so there's different ways in which to ask your body something and have them physically respond to you in a way that's like collaborative, and it makes it easier when you have widespread pain and you like try to talk to your body and you're like, what's up? And then you just hear the screams of the damned like from every part of you and you're like, I don't know which one of you needs me first. We gotta form a line here. um so yeah, let me know if you guys want me to expand on that. Yeah, I love this conversation. Go ahead, Jen Marie.
I love it when we have certain conversations and then certain people show up when these conversations start. So I'm going to circle us back around to the is it anxiety or is it intuition thing conversation. So like I had said before, like how I tell the difference is if it's anxiety, it's usually like what Maria said in the comments, it's yelling. It's like the world is gonna end. There's this like sense of urgency with anxiety. And with your intuition, it's more nagging. It's like nagging. And so what it would look like would be you're, washing the dishes or whatever, and you just get this like nagging, like, you know what, do you remember that cave that's like on the back end of the property that's like really cool? And you're like, oh, I haven't thought of that cave in so long. And then you're just like, it just nags at you and nags at you, and then it just feels really strong. You're like, you know what, the dishes can wait, I'm gonna go check out that cave. Like, I'm gonna go check out that cave. And you get down to the cave and a tornado comes through and tears up your house. Like, that's what your intuition would be more like, is just this like, oh, I'm curious about this. I'm like, interested in this. And anxiety would be like, oh my God. That's like usually the difference. So the thing that I really wanted to talk about though is that like we're getting really good at identifying like anxiety. I'm feeling this like overall tension, like what I think Whit was talking about. Like I kind of have a general sense of anxiety all the time. I've got this like feeling of, a lot of times there's this like powerlessness associated with that feeling of like anxiety. So for me, this comes down with like it's great you're identifying. Great you're identifying, but there's a point where you need to meet yourself and start to like alchemize that, because you are feeling a sense of anxiety because there's something that needs your attention. There's some unrest going on. And usually when there's this like general sense of anxiety, what ends up happening is that what your system needs is for you as the advocate of your system to sit down and be like, hey kiddo, it's okay. Like, it's going to be okay. We can trust our path. We can trust our magic. Look at how our magic has shown up for us, right? There's this like pep talk, this showing up for yourself thing that needs to happen, right? So identify the anxiety. You're allowed to be afraid. You're allowed to be nervous, but we're in this together. We're doing this together. It's the reassurance that's needed, and that's what's going to alchemize that and make it to where you're changing and adjusting your relationship with how your life unfolds, right? And that's that like following your intuition. It's like that the fool's journey of like, you just go about it and you follow your intuition about it, and it's an adventure instead of this like, my cup has been turneth over and do I drink or not? Anyway, so ta-da! Oh, ocean.
Oops, I forgot to take my hand down. Go ahead, Ezra.
I had another idea as a tool for this, and I always kind of go back to this whenever I am struggling with communication of any kind. And like for me, I can pretty much turn anything into a type of communication. Like either communicating with my body or communicating with my guides or my higher self or with the elements or whatever it is. And whatever I'm like perceiving that I am not getting through or I'm not being heard. What I like to do is to create a character, like basically personify what and then personify the concept and then talk to them. And then so like one of the things that was coming up for me, like if my anxiety were a person, how would they be talking to me right now? Like, and then when I'm saying like, oh, if it's my intuition, then it might be a guide, it might be my higher self, it could like that kind of thing. And when I think about my higher self, how would they talk to me as someone who is like transcended the physical plane and therefore like capitalism and all the anxieties of the physical world and that kind of thing? How would they be speaking to me? And that's what, when it was really striking me when I read Maria's comment about like the anxiety sound is like yelling, like, oh my gosh, things are happening. Holy shit, look at that. Like, oh, we have to figure something out. Like it's at very least, if not yelling, talking very fast. And running and like trying to get me to move, that kind of thing, as quickly as possible. Whereas like my higher self is just like, hey, just so you know, this, or like it's a lot. I don't know, it comes through more clearly when I picture them that way. And I'm a very character based person, so I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but like when I imagine that, it becomes a lot more clear. Then I'm like, if I'm hearing my anxiety at the same time, and I, and then I'm just like, okay, anxiety, then we can like settle down the anxiety to whatever extent that might be possible. And then focus in on what the higher self or inner child or whatever it is we're trying to listen to at that moment is saying. And I think for me, that kind of like compartmentalization through that personification, a lot of cations happening there, but that makes things a little more clear and separate, because otherwise we kind of end up maybe a little jumbled or confused. So yeah, hope that helps. Renee.
My puppy is missing my husband, so she might cry a little bit. She just does that. She'll smell like, so I think what it is she'll smell him somewhere sometimes, and she's like, oh no, I can't find him. Come here, Hilda, come here. All right, I'll be back later. Oh, I said I'll be back later, but I think she's done now. But so something that I thought about when it was mentioned, like specifically asking your body things, or having your body like be a helper. So I'm still like going through my meditation journey, like trying to figure out like the best way to meditate for myself. But in the past, what I used to do was I would actually hypnotize myself, which this is going to sound wild, but we got taught how to hypnotize ourselves in a high school class. So and one of the things to do to realize you were hypnotized was like what I would do, which is what we were taught to do in the class, is just tell one of your hands, like you pretend there's like a really strong helium balloon tied to your wrist, and that once you were actually in the state of hypnosis, that your arm would just float up and just, and it wouldn't feel like it was weighing anything, and it would just be, but it so like every time it happened, I would always just be like, oh my gosh, it's happening. I can't believe, this works. It's doing it, but it does work. So so I was just wondering if there was a way um to work that into kind of you know, like specifically talking to areas of your body to have it give you a um like a in your face sign, like just the way that an arm floating is an in your face sign. But um and then I was going to mention just how bizarre anxiety is and just the weird things that can happen, because I think I mentioned on the app, like a car fell off one of those car carousels, like that is toting around other cars, and almost like landed on me, but I had just changed lanes. And the funny thing is, like, that is more amusing to me, because I honestly did think, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die like Final Destination style. Like it's so dumb, like I wasn't meant to die that way. Like that actually doesn't give me anxiety. But um it is just strange that um things that should give me anxiety don't, and things that other people find ridiculous do. So I'm still working on that. But anyway, sorry, I'm all over. I just woke up too, so I'm kind of all over the place. But if no one else has anything else to bring up, I'm just going to bring up my big deal thing I'm really, really, really excited about, which is that 2028 is the year that they're going to reintroduce woolly mammoths, that they're supposed to resurrect woolly mammoths with, there's a de-extinction company called Colossal Bio, I can't remember, but they're bringing back woolly mammoths. They're working on dodo birds, and they're all excited because the next thing that they have just got all the information to bring back are thylacines, which are like the Tasmanian tiger. And so yeah, I'm excited about it. And like there are some people that, kind of worry about that, but I think like watching woolly mammoths on the tundra in Alaska is like, I could die happy. Like that's a bucket list thing. But and there are some animals that have already been de-extincted. Like there was a wild horse called a quagga, and they've brought quaggas back. I mean, like pretty low key, right? Like a lot of people probably don't even know that. So, but anyway, that is exciting news for me. I don't know how other people feel about it. I'd be curious, but I don't think anyone has their hand up, but I'm gonna hop off.
We are open for more weigh-ins or bring up a new topic if someone feels called to do so.
I just wanted to say that I think that's really cool. I did not know about them bringing back coggles. I don't know. I can't remember what you called them just a minute ago. But I think that is really cool. I think that it reminds me of like things like I once looked like into like or not I was going to say like climate changing the world, but like basically just ways to reverse once we end up fixing the trajectory of like going, the way I don't prefer, like the what we like enacting, spending all of our time, like enacting the ways to reverse the damage that's been done and to heal the earth and that kind of thing. And I think that's kind of cool. Like, I know that with woolly mammoths, I don't know if is that a specifically like human-based extinction. I don't even know. But especially in the context of all of them, the animals that are going extinct because of human intervention. That's a really like exciting premise. So thank you for sharing that.
They say woolly mammoths. Yes, it is human-based extinction, and the dodos, like everything they're like de-extincting is human-based.
Thank you.
And while my hand's up, I was just gonna say, what Ezra was just saying reminded me of when during COVID, everything, like the whole world shut down for a few days. And then there were pictures of, from like Delhi, India, places where they could see the Himalayan mountains that nobody had seen for like 40 years, like just how quickly the earth started recovering. Like it did not take long at all. Like before it looked completely different. Like it looked different. I mean, it was just crazy. So I've always thought, like, oh my gosh, we're past the point of no return. Like we've screwed everything up so much. But that actually gave me faith. I was like, oh my gosh, no, the earth can, like, if we're not doing all of these damaging things, it's going to bounce back super fast. And just also, again, just on a small scale, like things we can do ourselves. Like I just have been kind of researching like just native plants and in like no-till gardening and no-till soil, where plants actually get the chance to lay down their roots. And most of those times those roots will stretch down, several feet. And how different it is versus when you strip all that away. That's when you end up with things like the Dust Bowl, if that happened. But Stephanie.
Renee, I love that you brought up like how quickly the earth healed when things were really shut down in a lot of places, because I've thought about that a lot since that happened. And lately, as we've been really working in the guild on grounding and things like that, at the same time as my feeling overwhelmed by like, everything going on in the world and the changes in our planet and so on, a message that I continuously keep getting the reminder for is that what I can do is take care of my own, little physical spot that I am in, my yard, my plants, and connect with the land there in that way, in my locality. And that I can trust that others around the world are doing the same thing in their locality. And that by doing that, we are helping to heal or slow or change or grow or whatever it happens to be needed. And that's a message that just has continually come through to me. It's kind of like eyes on your paper, right? Like I can't go change what's happening in China, but I can affect what is happening here on my land and in my experience. So I just wanted to share that because what you said got me there. Ezra, go ahead.
Yeah, I love that so much, Stephanie. I remember this quote, I think it was Voltaire that said it, but it was like, you must cultivate your own garden. And that was it. You must cultivate your own garden. And that's what it makes me think of is taking care of your space. And also every time we do internal work, or things on ourselves, like as those things, like it made me think about, there was this like this book on Kabbalah that I read, and so I'm Jewish and I do some Kabbalah stuff, and there was this analogy that it said basically that trying to do things in the physical world to change, like, so like if you're standing there and you have your physical body and then you have your shadow, if you move, it's like you can't move your shadow without moving your physical body. Essentially, you would say that you, in the way that the analogy that they used was like that not like there's 99% of you here and then there's like the 1% of you that is the shadow. And essentially the analogy was the physical world is 1% of everything that exists. Like it's probably not exactly 1%, but for the sake of this, and there's everything else that's 99%, the other side, that kind of thing. And so when you try to like enact force on like changing things outside, it's like trying to move your shadow without moving your physical body. And so the analogy was there basically to say that the change ultimately happens in the spirit world, in the 99% everywhere else. And then you see the effects of that change happen in the physical world, in the 1%. And so as, you know, magical practitioners, I think that's especially poignant because then we know, oh, this is the internal, there's internal work here. And then I see and I do that. And that's something I can do. That's like the garden is in me that we were talking about too. And then that will come out and I will see the changes in the world around me. I will want to work on my garden. I will want to cultivate a relationship with my house and the things in my vicinity. But also even further than that, I think we will, as we continue to go deeper into the internal work, we will also see even bigger changes further than it seems like we have immediate effect over. But it's like a domino thing, like it takes a moment, but it kind of just like I'm just getting the sound like that's like the sound of dominoes falling. And so yeah, I just felt like I wanted to share that. I think that's it. Renee.
Well, I was going to say just along the lines of what Stephanie was saying. I think part of being witchy is we all think the same about a lot of things, you know, especially when we're talking about our, you know, love of nature and just our own kind of, you know, yards and gardens. And that's why I want a witch town, you know, because then, you know, you have a whole bunch of people that are not using lawn chemicals, you know. But then I was also thinking back to about just what one of the things that really interests me is when you can get get the, you know, your yard healthy and all of the little things that help one another. Like I'm also really interested in like vermiculture, which is like using worms to make the soil healthy. Like I love all of that stuff. And of course where I live, you know, it's a little bit different, but like in our yard we've let moss and clover take over. So we hardly have a lawn anymore. And I just have to say, for grounding purposes, like standing on a bed of moss is the best. Like, I highly recommend it. Like, find a nice, spongy, green, mossy area to stand on, and you feel pure magic. So anyway, I'm gonna hop off.
I can totally confirm that, because at the Convergence, there's like on the banks of the river, there's a bunch of moss, and I had never experienced that much moss before, because I was from like a more deserty area before I moved up here. And the moss, like when I was just walking around barefoot on the riverbank and just standing on the moss and like squishing my feet in it, and it like wasn't like gross or anything, it was like really soft, like it was like nature's carpet or whatever. And I felt that, and actually the moss helped me figure out the exact spot I wanted to be for the ritual the next night, or that night, I can't remember, but it like really spoke to me like magically. So like that totally resonates with me, Renee.
Yeah, it's funny because also, like, I'm just like, moss, moss. Like, it's just, it does feel like the most, like, one of the most magical things. It's wild. I'm a big fan of all mosses and lichens.
Renee, you can go ahead. You're on mute, Renee. Were you speaking?
I was, and I didn't know it. And I was going to say, sorry, if somebody else has something to say, I was just going to change the subject. Is that okay?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. I started reading another book last night. It's about cunning folk, which, we all know. And like I said, I just getting through like the intro and part of the first chapter, I was just like, wow, I am so excited about this book and reading this book and eventually talking about this book. But it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting because I feel like also like, if we there's so many things I think that we do, but just, I mean, like, both of my mom's grandmothers were uh midwives, which falls under the umbrella of cunning folk. And just how it's really interesting because in this book, like, cunning folk are very much part of their communities, but they also are very specialized. Again, I just started this book, but they'll be like someone who just helps people find things, or they kind of tend to be specialized. It's really interesting, and I can't wait to dig into it and talk more about it in a meaningful way. But it's one of the things that's really stood out to me is that they historically, cunning folk and witches are in two completely separate categories. But if the cunning folk, somebody had an issue with them, then they flop over into witch territory, um, which is that the witches are all seen to all of like in this book, the witches historically were seen to practice baneful magic, and the cunning folk do not practice baneful magic. So that if one of the cunning folk goes to the baneful side, then they become a witch. It's really interesting. I mean, obviously we all probably have like a lot of feelings about that, but um yeah, it's like I've been looking for a good book about it, and this one I just started it, so I'm not gonna like recommend it just yet, but I think that's a really interesting subject if we just wanted something else to kick around a little bit. And I'll get off here.
I actually have a change of subject, if that's okay. But nobody else has any weigh-ins. Like I said, raise your hand or flail about. Give me the signal. um, it's I wrote up some of it in the app just before SASS. Let's see, where do I start with this? So last weekend, I went to the Scottish games that we have here locally. My DNA, my heritage is, Irish, Scotch, Welsh, Germanic tribes, white. And we go to that every year. It's super fun. Lots of logs being flipped and kilts and bagpipes and such. And they have a lot of vendors. And as I was going through the vendors area, I was at a table and I picked up this small, like, ceramic plaque that was like a woman's face with a lot of like plant life around it, similar to like the Green Man type thing. Um, and as I was holding it, the vendor behind the table came over to me and said, "Oh, that's a representation of Danu, the mother of the Tuat Didanan." Didanan. I can never say that right, and I'm probably doing a terrible job. And he asked me if I knew who that was, and I said, "Yeah, sure. I've read Mist of Avalon. I know who it's the ancient people of the hills of Ireland, right? The fairy folk." Um, and we locked eyes, and like when I say the world around me stopped, it's not quite the way it happened. Like everything kept going, but time for us slowed down. Like it became different than the time around us. And he is from Ireland. He does tours of Ireland and the lands, helping people to connect with the spirit of the land in Ireland and with the hills and the so on. And he he gave me so much information, and I'm not sure how much time went by, like if it was really, really long or really, really quick. I'm not sure. Time was a really weird factor in this. And um he filled me in on a lot of the spiritual beliefs of the Celts and the land and the Tuatha De Danann, and the four treasures. And I mean, there was a lot of that, and it was just a wild experience to really connect with him. And then everything kind of just whoosh came back, and we were more present, and we said our goodbyes, and it felt really sad, like, to leave him. Like, I didn't want to. I wanted to stay with him for like a really long time. And then after I walked away, I kept feeling really called to go back and get this little plaque. And so I did. And I have it here with me. And that has I sent me down a path of reading and learning that I never foresaw myself going down. I personally have never worked with deities. I, was interested in the tales of my land for my DNA and stuff like that, but um I had never really fully gone down that um rabbit hole. So I'm reading this book called Wild Magic, the Celtic folk traditions for the solitary practitioner. Oh my God, I just looked at the name of the author. You're never going to guess. Denu Forest. Whoa. Okay. Woo. That is crazy. So, oh wow. I did not look at that before just now. So, anyway, that was a really cool experience that I had for the first time, I think consciously, where I'm feeling like I'm being led down this particular path of study. And like I said, I have not worked with deities before, and that's not where I'm at yet. I'm just very much in the learning stages. So I will put the book name in there. Yes, Petra, I will do that. Um, and yeah, so if anybody has any stories that are connected to those sorts of experiences, I even wonder, I was like, was he fairy? Like, the time, like when I say the time changed, I'm telling you it changed. It went on around me in a different kind of way. So I just felt called to share that because I know that there are a few people here today that were asking about that experience. So if anybody has any weigh-ins, I would or resources for that, because it's really kind of hard to find anything on Danu. So I would be grateful for those as well. And I'm going to mute. If anybody wants to weigh in or change the subject, feel free. Renee, go ahead.
This is just a little rule of thumb that, and I just saw someone who specializes in accents talking about this. So the original Irish language, they didn't have a th, so that's why I'll be like I think instead of I think, because their original language doesn't have the th sound. Like if you see a th in there, just remember, leave that h out, just for fun, because I love I'd say it's one of my specialties is fae and monsters and magical creatures, and so I am really into all of that stuff. But yes, and so of course there's a million crazy names for all their local regional good people, because they don't like to call them fairies, don't like to be called fairies. But yeah, like, just rule of thumb, if it says a th and it's Irish, just drop that h out. Okay, bye, sorry.
No, that's great. I've actually figured out that first part. It's the second part. Is it Danan or Danon? There's a couple of A's in there. So I'll just keep saying it all sorts of ways until I figure it out. I just like to own that I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing.
I love all the Fae talk. I am a big fan of the Fae, and I have gone down several like rabbit holes of my own in I don't know the last couple years. But I was called to like look into like my Dutch heritage, and so like over in that area. And I also got a book. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'll once it comes. I just ordered it yesterday, and now I have some other book recommendations. I'm very excited to talk about this some more at some point. But I'm kind of like coming up blank on anything to say about it. But yeah, I'm definitely curious as to other people's thoughts and feelings on Fae and Cunning Folk. Go ahead, Renee.
So I would say, like in my personal experience, when I was in second grade, so I was little, but I was already into it. And so one of my school teachers actually gave me the Brian Froud, Alan Lee book Fairies, which is very famous, with the illustrations. So from a very young age, like I have known what fairies are, and I've known that they're not Tinkerbell, like I've known they're tricksy, and that I feel like most people's the thing they don't get about them is they have a lot of rules, and that they do not adhere to the Judeo-Christian ethic, right? And so whenever, this is a personal little pet peeve of mine, whenever I hear people or read about people or on forums or whatever talking about how they work with the Fae, and if like if you are afraid to do it, or or it didn't work out for you, you're doing it wrong. I am of the opposite school of thought, which is I personally um I would leave them offerings. I would not seek them out. I would not mess with them. Like I would not, even though they're like one of my most favorite things in the whole world. And I feel like I do know a lot. I feel like I know a lot to know to not mess with them, because again, it is an interesting thing that they have a lot of rules, but the rules kind of go contrary to what, like you're not supposed to say thank you to them, right? Which I mean, that goes totally contrary to how most people operate in the world. So again, they're older than anything, and they do not adhere to the Judeo-Christian ethic, and so people should not expect them to do that, because uh they don't work that way, and they're not little cartoony things. So I'm not sure who's next, but I'm gonna hop off here.
I believe it's me. I'm not positive, but mine is like super short. But as I was reading this book, Wild Magic, and I agree with you. I've never gone down the Fae rabbit hole because there are so many rules, and it would be way too easy for me to mess that up. But in a couple of the readings, it says how leaving gifts of clothing is super offensive, which I love. It's adorable to think get mad if you leave them clothes, because like, how dare you suggest that they would need such a thing. But I think that's adorable. But Ocean, I think you're next, if I have that right.
Sorry, I was away from my phone and then I heard my name. I was like, oh no. Um, so my first encounter with the Fae, and like I am clairvoyant, so I've had a lot of visual experiences with different I don't really want to define it because I can't really say what they are. And the more that I interact with my magic in the present moment, um, the more that I realize that labels are like a cultural way of trying to describe something. And I don't identify with most of the labels for like a lot of things that I've encountered, because it comes with all of these expectations on what the experience felt like, looked like, and like how it went down the moment you say the word. So I know, and I just said like my first encounter with the Fae, but since we're talking about Fae, I'm gonna put it under that label because that's the feeling signature and experience aligns with what I'm hearing described. I know this is such a long explanation, but just bear with me. So uh I must have been in like 4th grade or something. I was in Tennessee for the first time. I was like visiting a family member, and I was seeing fireflies for the first time in my life. And I was like, they were super magical, and I was like really entranced, and it was like a whole thing. And I swore I saw a blue one. And I just kept telling my family, I saw a blue one, and they're like, you have a great imagination. But I could have sworn that one of them was blue. Um, and for me, that like later, the more that I learned about like fae and fairy type, that felt like my first encounter with something. And then I kind of got really into cryptids at one point. I can't really remember when, but I'm like a really anxious person, but then I'm like really obsessed with why. So cryptids freak me out like really bad, but like at the same time, I think it's a really cool that there's these like instances of overlap of um like light waves, like wave lengths. Oh my gosh, words are hard. That get picked up by like cameras and stuff. And I know like there's all the controversy over like what's real and not, but if you take it for what it is, then it's really cool to think about how there could be overlap between, or even uh like moments, almost like you caught like a wild animal, like in the same thing, or like you caught a person like not paying attention and doing something cool or whatever. Um, and so I think of the Fae as another like cryptid type being. Like like if I were gonna describe it in the mundane world, I would probably like say that. Or I don't know. I don't want to say the mundane world because it's all the same thing. Obviously my brain is all over the place. The full moon has me so scatterbrained. Like who else hasn't slept in like a week? Because I am upright, but the lights are kind of flickering up here. So I used to think that it was kind of something to be scared of, and I would try to learn everything I could about all the rules. But the more that I learn about connection-based magic, and the more that I understand that the only thing that has power over me is me, and the more that I learn that I'm only responsible for my feelings and nobody else's, the less that I feel I would be able to be taken advantage of spiritually like that. Anyway. And so anything that I do is in alignment with my highest good. So if my highest good is to be taken to the Fey realm, then so be it. But I feel pretty safe, and I do whatever I'm called to. Like the thing is I'm not great at like pre-planning a lot of my rituals. And what I'm learning is that I can do them intuitively and just write them down as I'm going, or like write down notes afterwards. Uh Rather than trying to like pre-plan the most perfect, well thought out ritual, because I'm always going to forget something. And then the shame of I didn't do it correctly already, like going into it, will like flavor the whole thing, right? And then I'll just get to experience that in my experience and get to deal with that, which is fine. But it feels a little more efficient for me to go in with the feeling signature of like fun. And so I've been applying that to like my outside time too. So like sometimes I just like dig like twigs into the ground and make them like little trees. I don't know if that's considered an offering. That's not my intent. My intent is this was fun and I had fun doing this, and I'm gonna leave it there as a little whimsical thing because that's definitely part of my energy is like whimsy. And so I don't know, I just wanted to bring it back to connection-based magic too, because I know that that can get into like this like weird place. And it's so interesting how music plays a part in that. The next time you're watching something like a scary TikTok or like a scary movie, try muting it and put on some like other music, like happy music or like funny music or something. Play with the feeling signatures of what you're observing because it helps it like put into context how much your sensory experience affects how you feel and how you and what you're experiencing affects, you know, then like it informs the releasing and the manifesting that we do as witches. I feel, I don't know, that's just my opinion, but I think Ezra is next. Go ahead.
So, on the topic of fearing the Fae, one thing that came to mind for me was that the Fae are not a monolith. And so working, I think that it's possible to connect to the magical elements of the Fae that you would like to, and the in Fae individuals. Also, something that came up for me several times, like during my connection-based magical journey, was what fear is there for, and who put it there. And I think like one of the analogies I had was like when I was wondering why I was like scared of a spider, right? Basically, I was like thinking, oh, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. And I was like, oh, that's kind of like what the spider doesn't want me to do too, right? Like the spider doesn't want me to crush it, right? And so fear could be saying, hey, this energy does not want you to touch it. That totally could be a thing, right? I also think though, that there are elements, especially when it comes to magic, and ghosts and, you know, all these spooky stories. They have been told, I think, in many ways to keep us from our own magic. And so I think examining the literature that we read when we were kids. I also loved that fairy book growing up, and several different uh, like art books about fae, and that really led me through my childhood and into my more serious appreciation for them in my practice. But I think just really look kind of back to what we originally started the conversation with, was anxiety versus intuition. Is your intuition saying, I'm not meant to work with the Fae? Or are your anxieties, which have often been stoked by like people that would rather magical practitioners not be in connection with their magic, stories that they told to keep us scared of interacting with our magic in a certain way? So I'm so excited to hear what Morgana has to say.
Well, in this category, you know, I was going to put it one way, but I guess it's not really fair. There's folk tradition, kind of cryptid-like tales. And those are very specific. They have very specific traditions. In those cases, you're honoring a tradition. Like if you do these specific things, this specific entity will do this specific task. Or if you do these specific things, you will develop a relationship with this specific entity for this specific purpose. Those are consistent throughout different cultures and different times, and throughout time. So that's a universal folklore. And then there's the Due de Donna. I know I screwed that one up too, because I don't know Gaelic. I've had interaction with them. There used to be a great TikTok channel. I think they changed it to doing very official before they like disappeared. But I think it's for me intellectually, it helps me to look at it as they are interdimensional beings that interact with Earth. Their concept of time, existence, their interactions with our physical plane are all different. We are just as confused as they are confused with us. Which, if you look at the legends, I believe that's held out. Couple other things that are held out is, I wouldn't say they're rules based, they're very, very literal. To a fault, literal. And that includes if you say yes, or if you say no, that's an absolute. And one of the major failings of humanity in the ancient tales is failure. Failure to keep their word, failure to, complete tasks. So that's been a consistent marker in the relationships between the two. So those are the things I keep in mind when I have interaction. And, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be polite. I'm going to be consistent. I'm not going to accept anything. I'm not going to give anything. That's what I do out of an abundance of caution. But I also know that I'm going to encounter the Fae in the future. It's just one of those things I know. And I also know there's more things I need to learn before I get there. And you know, they're not bad or good. You know, according to our morals, they just operate on a different moral standard. I guess Ezra's already said that, but yeah, to reiterate it, and that literalness, that absoluteness comes in again. Some neurodivergent people have a tendency toward that, as an example, you know. You know, if I'm having a really, really bad time, that will happen to me where I'm like, there's only one way to do things. If you don't do it this way, it's wrong. And if it's wrong, everything's ruined and everything in the universe is going to fall apart. They don't throw anxiety in there, but that's special to me. But yeah, I'm captivated, amazed, intrigued. I want to know more about them. But I also know that I'm not supposed to do that right now. So I'll be very, very interested to hear what you find out vicariously. I'll learn from you. So.
Ezra, I think you're up next. Did your hand go up again?
Yes. I just had one more thing to add. Something that I think it was maybe a year or so ago, I really went into like a deep dive from a connection-based and deconstructed perspective in my rabbit hole of all of the lore around Fae. And I just want to call attention to, since we basically, as far as we know, what we know about Fae has been reported by humans, who, and a lot of the things they had to say were like warnings, like things like, oh, they're going to trick you. Things like, oh, they have all these rules, and if you break them, you're in trouble, like that kind of stuff. I just want to point out the similarities of so much of this reporting that sounds similar to xenophobia and racism, because that is how it is handled. Like when there's another group of people who, people are like, oh, I don't really know why, but they're dangerous. Like, don't look at them. Like, don't, if you don't know their customs, they might hurt you. Like that kind of thing. And so that kept on coming up in my research. And I was like, oh, so really for me, it's more about the connection that I want to have with the Fae, and then I'll learn personally rather than take somebody else's word for it. That's maybe, as far as I know, coming from a deeply, conditioned place of fear. So, Renee.
Oh, is it me? Oh, sorry. I didn't see anything. So I was when Ezra and Morgana both mentioned just kind of the ethical system, that's kind of what I was trying to say when they don't adhere to the Judeo-Christian ethic. Like, yes, they definitely have their own ethical system. But just a couple other things I wanted to mention real quick is that there are a lot of urban encounters with Fae, Stephanie, and I think I've had some as well, and it is very like there's a part of your brain that's just going like, what's going on right now? Like something is going on right now. What is going on right now? And then I also just wanted to mention that there is a very rich history in North America, specifically Alaska, of Fae with indigenous people. And we actually have several groups of of Fae and fairies in Alaska. And that also might be part of the reason I am so cautious about them. Um, I I've I'm very steeped in our local lore, but if anybody's ever curious, I have whole books about that are it would amaze you. Like they look European, right? So that's one thing, like the indigenous people always said. They very much look like a traditional gnome, but they wear traditional indigenous clothing. And they so they're wearing like fur parkas, and they the further north you get, the more kind of encounters they are, but they're also caribou hunters. And I have a friend who saw a group of them harvesting a roadkill fox on the side of the road, and she's not witchy, and so she emailed me and she's like, oh my gosh, I don't know who else to talk to about this is such a crazy thing. But anyway, and then so yeah, I just wanted to mention that too. Like there's so much to it. And I feel like I have a lifetime of being immersed in it and studying it and having it be like I have a sign in my living room that says don't piss off the fairies, you know. Like it's just kind of one of my personal things. But I totally understand what everybody is saying, and I totally appreciate what you're saying, Ezra. And just like I'll just say for me, like when I just want to distill it down and I have an image in my head, I don't know if everyone saw Pan's Labyrinth, but there's a big scene where there's like a banquet, and my husband is like, oh, I would totally eat that food. And when I see it, I'm like, there is nothing in the universe that could make me touch that food, you know. So that's it's anyway, that to me kind of encapsulates how I feel about them. Like like I know that rule, you know. So I'm gonna hop off.
I am super grateful for this conversation because, like, reframing it with the perspective of connection based magic and see how it possibly could be xenophobic and everything has changed, I think, how I'll be able to do more research. So super, super grateful for y'all for sharing that. We've still got about 15 more minutes before we wrap things up. So we can have more weigh-ins. We can have a change of subject if anybody feels called. I'm going to mute and, just raise your hand if you have something to add or you would like to change the discussion.
I want to just say one thing. One thing that came up was, so I said it in the chat, but I feel like my tone may not have come across. So I wanted to elaborate. Like, I love scary movies. I have fun with fear, and you can't. It's like you can't do. Like, so if you're enjoying having that relationship, and you're like, you have the sign like, don't piss off the fairies, like, that it feels like that's part of your experience and the connection that you have with the fairies. And if you're having fun with that, like, I'm not trying to like critique that at all. So I know, yes, exactly. I know that you're a scary movie person too. And so anytime, like I just like I kind of had this like vision of like a fae just being like, you can be scared of me, like I'll be scary, like sure, like that kind of thing. And like it's like a very playful energy of fear though, like I for me anyway. So I just felt like I wanted to throw that in there too. So like chills are fun. Like when Renee, when you were describing the fae, I got like a whole like body chill that went through me, and I was like, ooh, that's fun. Like I must be like a little bit like it's like it definitely felt magical, but it felt like a little bit creepy too at the same time. So yeah. Let's see. Morgana, I think. I'm not sure if it's Petra or Morgana.
Yeah, Petra was up next and then
Okay.
Morgana.
Hello, team. I just wanted to add a piece with kind of the rules. I think it's so interesting that some of these like rules are universal. Like when Renee was talking about the food, I haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth for forever, but I was just thinking about, I was like, it made me think about Persephone, because I was like, that's like, I learned that rule from that Greek myth. I was like, no, like, just like, as someone offers you food, don't do it. Like, you're in a weird place, just like, be like, I'll pass. And so I just thought that was interesting, because I think that it's like, that's one of the things that I really like, is finding these kind of like ubiquitous themes that kind of like go throughout different traditions and are like, hey, this is kind of a thing. And I thought that was interesting. And then this is just to like kick it back to like way before, when we were talking about anxiety and intuition. I've just been like bebopping around my house, and so I was like, I'll just add this in later. But was just that like the other piece of that, from like a somatic perspective, is that anxiety is like a mobilization energy. So it's often like, I think in our society, because we're so like cognitively based, and Descartes did that beautiful terrible thing where he said, the mind and the body are separate, which are not true. That we forget that like lots of these things live in the body, and so they often, to be metabolized, to be worked through, our body wants us to do something with that. And so it's just another piece of like, if you're finding like, hey, I'm having trouble like differentiating, like, is this anxiety, is this intuition, like, go move your body in a way that feels good and gets that energy mobilized, and you'll often find like your thoughts will kind of clear, and you'll be able to be like, okay, like that feels like there was like, that feels less loud now, and maybe the message shifts as well. There's the easiest way, if mobility allows, is like walking. It down regulates the amygdala, so it like down regulates your fear center, bilateral movement. So like swimming also does this, like anything where you're moving both sides of your body technically. So like yoga does this because of this as well, is that it tells our body like, hey, you're safe because you're moving away from a thing, or you're like doing both sides. Like that's also, EMDR utilizes this principle. Or even if like movement isn't a thing, you can do something called like havening, where you like rub on both sides of your body, and that will kind of like move, it can metabolize some of that mobilization energy, so that your body can kind of like be in a place where you can kind of understand what's going on. Because I think also oftentimes we're like, oh, I like have this chronic stream of intrusive thoughts, and I was talking about this with someone yesterday, and I'm like, I really wonder how much of this is just because we're such a sedentary society now, like not in a judgmental way, but just in a functional, structural way. Our cities are built for us to like drive, or we have desk jobs, all of these things. And, obviously like mobility isn't available to everybody. And so I don't say this from a place of like toxic wellness culture or judgment or anything like that. But just that, like, is there any way to bring movement into that? Is your body asking for something that might help you utilize that anxious energy, so that that differentiation between like, is this anxiety, is this intuition, what's going on here, could maybe like become clear. So I just wanted to offer that as like a tool piece. I think it's Morgana's turn, so I'm gonna hand over to her.
Okay. Quick note on the Fae. Some of the Fae are scary. You know, not all of them are nice, and some of them, you know, are really scary. So, you know, some people who have, you know, well, there are people who have experiences that are really scary. So that's legitimate too. Interesting, we got back to grounding. You know, I was really getting down on myself. I like posted on the app. I was like, hey, I need to be more like involved. I need to do more. I was stuck in, okay, I just need to do better. You know, I need to, if you do better, if you want something to change, then you have to change what you're doing. The factor I was ignoring is, you know, between April and now, I had 6 different catalysts that, you know, all on their own, like just one of them, for a lot of people would be like, oh, okay, this has completely upset my life and just totally turned everything around. You know, so dissociation is a lot more common right now. It's my body's defense against, you know, being highly stressed. And part of that is because I'm like in a situation that causes stress, therefore causes dissociation that I can't fix right now. So I'm like, okay, I'm not involved in my practice the way I want to be. I am not like engaged in the community the way I want to be. And I wasn't grounded in what was going on in my life because of the dissociation. So I wasn't setting realistic expectations. I was just like, this is what I used to do. Why am I not doing what I used to do? You know, I have people say like XYZ about me, and I'm not achieving XYZ. What is going on with me? I did, you know, make effort within what I have available to me to make changes so I could ground myself. And it did make it. In this specific example, you know, I had somebody take me to like the park where, and it was a smaller park that most people don't go to. So it was more peaceful. So I could sit outside on the ground in nature, near water. Those are all things that help me greatly. And so I was more grounded. I was thinking more clearly. I could be more practical with my situation, be like, wow, you're juggling 6 different catalysts that all by themselves, just one of them is enough to upset your life. And you're juggling 6 of them, and one of them's ongoing currently. And your support structure that you usually have isn't as robust as it usually is. So if you're not your idea of like super witch or whatever, that's okay. You're going through something difficult. Take notes, be honest, in kindness, be honest in kindness. I say that twice for myself. And, you know, eventually things will change so that I can get back to my normal, less dissociative self. So, yeah. That's it.
We have just a very few minutes, like 3 minutes. So I want to remind everybody that the full moon is on its way. I have it down for tomorrow afternoon where I am here in New York. So tonight I'm going to put out my moon water and get it on that side of the full moon, I think. Anybody else doing anything for this full moon? Ocean, go ahead.
It's I just want to say that it's the Aquarius full moon. It's a super moon. So be weird and like celebrate your weirdness would be like my advice. Can I also just say real quick, I wanted to speak to what Morgana said, that like I think that there's a lot of power in validation and being able to like not only acknowledge yourself, but like have somebody else acknowledge how much you are juggling and like how much you have been through. I know when I've had like witches here and friends go, wow, Ocean, like you're doing great, even though you've been through like so much. It's healing, it's validating. And I think that under capitalism, we're taught. I've been thinking of like perfectionism as kind of a creative disability, because it literally keeps me from creating. And I feel kind of the same way about our culture of like having to be strong and like there's, if somebody has to be the strong one, it should be me, right? I'm the one who's not allowed to fall apart because then everybody else can. And I see this permeate through like witch culture, and it just like, or not even our culture, like, right, like it's our stereotypes, because like our culture has been so suppressed. And so yeah, I don't know, I just wanted to validate that. And happy full moon.
I love that, Ocean. Thank you. That's a really good perspective about creativity. I love it. And thanks, cousins. I guess that's a wrap. It's 4:00. And it was good to see and hear from everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.